So what's the standard for IoT? So different solution providers, whether it's big providers, for example, if it's Amazon, Google, they're coming with new IoT technologies, for example, in the smart home based system. So is it interoperable with other technologies? Can we have an interoperable system or technology? That's a big question, because a lot of things, as we see, and being a technology person, and that's one of the discussions I always have, we always get very much fascinated about technology, and being an engineer myself, that we forget about a lot of issues that needs to be happening. Like it's a lot of pieces of the puzzle that needs to be put place for a technology to thrive and have ubiquity. One of them definitely is interoperability and standardization.
Hi, Smart Community friends. In this episode of the Smart Community Podcast, I have a great conversation with engineer and smart technologies advocate, Dr. Emran Amin. Emran tells us about his background as an engineer and an academic, and his passion for contributing his knowledge of smart technologies. Emran explains a bit about the standards for barcodes, parallels between standardization of barcode technologies to other smart technologies such as printable RFIDs, and why interoperability is so important. We then discuss what he's been working on with the City of Casey as a community reference group member in the Smart Casey team, plus some interesting projects he's been working on from his home country of Bangladesh. We finish our chat talking about data ethics shaping the future of smart cities and communities, and how context really changes the way you approach smart technologies, data-driven decision-making, and community engagement. As always, we hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it.
Welcome to the smart community, smart regions, smart towns, and smart cities. It's where we live, work, and play. With smart communities, the future starts today. Big data, smart mobility, emerging trends galore. The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.
Hello, Imran. How are you today?
Fine, thanks, Joey.
I'm so glad to have you on the podcast. I'm really excited to have this conversation. So let's just jump straight in. Can you tell us about your background and what you're passionate about?
Yeah, first of all, many thanks for the invitation to your podcast. I'm excited to share my journey and experience. First of all, I'm Dr. Emran Amin, as my name says, and I'm an engineer. In background, I have an electrical and electronics engineering degree, and I finished my PhD from Monash University on smart technologies, particularly radio frequency identification, RFID, and smart labels, printable RFIDs, and overarching Internet of Things and IoT. So that kind of tells why I'm passionate about the smart technologies. Yeah. Part of my journey was definitely being a researcher academia. I also worked at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, Boston, as a visiting researcher, and I still have some connections. And the lab I worked on is Auto ID Lab. So those who doesn't know about Auto ID Lab, they are one of the pioneers in RFID, also barcoding technologies. So one of their ventures were GS1, who is kind of the who make the standards for barcodes and QR codes. They're pretty big. So that's Auto ID, and I worked with them and really had a good experience. When I came back to Australia, I worked in the industry, primarily as a design engineer, like an RF design engineer, and I'm currently working in the government, in the public sector, as a planning and policy engineer. So that's a bit of my overall journey and where I'm coming from. But apart from my journey as an academician, then working in the industry, and also working with the government and the public sector, I have always a passion to contribute in this field of smart technologies, where it's IoT, Internet of Things, machine-to-machine communication, and whatever the name you gave, like automation, or currently we are talking about digital twins. Yeah. So I've been working in different platforms. For example, IEEE, which is Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. They are one of the largest volunteer organizations for engineers. So I've been working with them. And also I'm working with my local city council in the City of Casey as one of the community reference group members in their Smart Casey initiative. So within these platforms, what I've been doing, working as an advocate for smart technologies, helping them to strategize and plan for what should be the next smart move and what are the pilots programs should be happening. And finally, I also need to mention I have a lot of work, do voluntary work within the space in Bangladesh, which is my original home country and where I'm originally from. I have co-founded a couple of ventures called IoT for Bangladesh, Internet of Things, and Code 19 Bangladesh. Through those, what I see how IoT can enable not only the businesses or the agricultural sector or the government sector in general, but and also how Internet of Things or IoT can enable the young population, because Bangladesh has a huge young population and big potential, and I'm always passionate about giving back to my country, especially the young population, with the enabling or technology awareness and technology know-hows that they need, and I'm very much keen to contribute in that aspect. So that's another very big area where I am keen to work, and have been working for many years through blogging, through workshops, seminars, and talking about smart technologies. So that's another passion where I spend my time. So that's a bit of the different things I've been doing and how I kind of see myself in the realm of smart technologies and smart communities. Yeah.
Yeah, such a wide range there as well. And keen to dig into that a bit more. I was thinking while you're talking about barcodes, because it's so interesting, because it's such a technology. I was looking, at this bottle that I have here with barcode on it. It's such a technology that we don't even think about. But for them to have a standardized barcode is actually phenomenal when you think about it. And it does go to show that we can standardize things essentially globally, right? When we really need to, when it's focused on and driven and, all that kind of thing as well. Because, we often talk about interoperability of technologies and things. It's not to say that every barcode is the same, but we've got that standard approach that then it feeds to, we all understand what it should do and how it should do it.
Yeah.
So I think that's so interesting. I imagine you've drawn a lot of, parallels to different technologies, and then that learnings from that as well, that they can feed into other smart technologies as well.
Yeah, I definitely want to put a couple of cents in when you talk about the standardization barcode, because one of the chapters in my thesis, which was published in a book later on, work our group did was on chipless RFID. When you say chipless, so basically it's printable RFID. And one of the things I did is a history of tagging and technologies. I can't remember the exact date, but it's 1950s, 60s when they actually started barcode. And when we say barcode nowadays, a QR code, we just print it like anything, because it's standardized. You go anywhere in the world, you can just read a QR code with your mobile phone. But it took a lot of years to come with this standard technology. There was a lot of iterations, different companies coming up with these technologies, and then they come up with, after 2000, the GS1, one of the largest standardization companies for barcodes and QR codes and also RFIDs. They're working about more than 150 countries now. So they have come up with these standards. Similarly, because I was more interested in RFID and radio frequency identification, standardization is a big issue. And after that, now we talk about Internet of Things and IoT. So what's the standards for IoT? So different solution providers, whether it's big providers, for example, if it's Amazon, Google, they're coming with new IoT technologies, for example, in the smart home-based system. So is it interoperable with other technologies? Can we have an interoperable system or technology? That's a big question, because a lot of things, as we see, and being a technology person, and that's one of the discussions I always have, we always get very much fascinated about technology, and being an engineer myself, that we forget about a lot of issues that needs to be happening. Like it's a lot of pieces of the puzzle that needs to be put in place for a technology to thrive and have ubiquity. One of them definitely is interoperability and standardization. And we have seen a lot of technologies, and talking about RFIDs, the concept started 2003 and hasn't really done the expectations as it should be doing, because they were thinking, RFID is going to take out all the barcodes in the world, but it didn't. It's not only the interoperability or standardization issue, but also the cost, the user friendliness and those sort of things. What I'm trying to get is, as a technologist, we also need to think of other aspects which needs to be taken into account for technology to thrive and make it available for everyone's doorstep. So that's a discussion. Definitely, I'm happy to have more. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm keen to dive in a bit more, but I want to go broad first, otherwise we'll forget to go there. So let's go broad. What is a smart community to you?
Look, you can define differently. Smart community, what I see, who are thinking differently, they're more agile. And what I see, smart community, first of all, uses technology as a tool, a driving tool to enable them to do a number of things or particular focus things. For example, if someone is doing business or doing startups, entrepreneurship, or start a smart community would say, look, I'm going to use this smart technology to have more efficient innovation in the business. If someone is looking for sustainable living, sustainable community, technology will enable them or be used as a tool to become more sustainable. So the fundamental thing is, you have this technology as a tool. This really needs to be involved. So that's why I'm saying technology is not the end thing. It's the tool to take you somewhere you want to go. It's fundamentally, philosophically, that's how I see it. So as I said, like, we are now talking about sustainable society, climate change, waste reduction. We are talking about circular economy. So all these concepts are really good, really great. But when we put in the smart lens, what I see is how technology can be used to have those objectives. And similarly, I do a lot of parallel with a country like Australia, like a first world country, uses everything's very smooth and running autonomously because a lot of digitization, with countries like Southeast Asia, like India, Bangladesh, because in those countries, people also definitely are looking to get smarter. There are a lot of smart communities, but how technology is used there is completely different. Completely, because it's so chaotic, it's so disorganized, because the system has not been set up such that any technology can go and be adapted there. So what I mean is, the goals and the focus of technologies in those countries would be much different. Same technology, but you have to be used differently, or you have to do any sort of customization, or what I say, the context would be different. So just to summarize my answer, like, again, coming back to that, it's technology which is an enabler, but it's going to be used in different time zones, different communities, different contexts differently. And that's what I see as smart community.
Yeah, I like that. I think the context part is so important. And I think also, context in the sense of what the community want to use it for, but then how it will be used as well. Like you said, the systems and processes set up that it can plug into can do that. But if there's not, but we still want the technology to improve the lives of the community, we have to work around, and there's and we use our own special innovations to be able to do that, right? So I think that's really interesting, and I do think that everyone deserves to be able to adopt certain technologies and thrive with different technologies as a tool. So I think it's important then we don't just talk about where it's doing well and how we're all going to be fine, but where we can actually help people that don't have access to the network now that you were talking about as well, and volunteer work that you've been doing as well. I'm really keen to talk through that too. So okay, let's go to what you've been working on. There's so many things. I will let you choose. What would you like to share with us a bit more about? And tell us a little bit about some of the projects and things you've been working on.
Yeah, definitely. As I mentioned, in my local community, in the city of Casey, I'm one of the community reference group members. So I advocate and advise the Smart Casey team, which is doing fantastic work in terms of adopting some initiatives within the community, and been involved on that. Especially, they have been working on an open data platform. When I say open data platform, in bringing all the data, like the community data, all the public data within the council to one platform, so that people can be more engaged and be more involved and integrated with the data. And this data immersion is the next big thing, because we want to have a community, or we are looking towards to go to a community where we take as a human being, we want to be taking decisions, doing our works done with more informed, data-driven approach. Yeah, that's the way we are going. Whether you talk about AI, data analytics, the main fundamental focus is more data-driven approach and more informed, knowledgeable approach. So that's why I think that's a really good initiative, which I'm really passionate to see how City of KC is going about. Apart from that, there is another concept called the Living Lab. So they're coming with some innovative projects like Smart Bench and other projects for having digital inclusion, because identifying where the digital inequity is there within the community and trying to address those is really important. End of the day, what I feel like, and when I'm working for any sort of initiatives in smart communities, my approach is always focused and principle driven. So what's the focus? What's the principle? Based on the principles we are working, as I said, like there can be a lot of things we can do. We can do a lot of trials with technologies, but my goal is, okay, what is the main goal? What are we trying to achieve? What are the KPIs we are trying to put forward for this particular technology or innovation? Yeah, and then how we going to achieve that? And I'm really much like a KPI focused for any technologies or any projects. Being also a project manager and KPI driven person, I want to see how the results are coming and how we're analyzing the results and taking the next steps. And why I'm focusing on that, this is very important because I have been seeing with my 10 to 12 years journey as an academia in the industry is there's a lot of hype. And I've seen in your small bio that a lot of hype, a lot of bubbling, talking on smart technologies. And I know a lot of people are frustrated. I can tell a lot of people are frustrated. And I also sometimes get frustrated because people are doing pilots, doing projects, but why they are not going to the next stage? Why we don't see a lot of pilots taking enlargement or be going to a lot of big projects? I think definitely there are many reasons, but one of the reasons I found, which is universal, is they have not really said what are the KPIs or the targets, what is the focus, and what is the next steps, and what is the decision metrics we're going to take. So these are things is very important. So wherever I go for any initiatives, I try to work on those. Apart from here in Australia, I've been all definitely, I just said, in Bangladesh, I do a lot of mentoring, advocacy in the smart community area. Definitely go advocating within my alumni, in my research and academia community, as well as any communities who is looking to do any innovative technologies. I help them and I give them strategies to go forward in developing prototypes or any type of solution. So that's also a number of projects. It can be in agriculture, it can be in warehouse or manufacturing facilities, or it can be in STEM education. Because countries like in Bangladesh, there is a huge scope, and as I said, like there's a lot of young population. They're looking to grow in their, whether they're for career or they're passionate about STEM or robotics or Internet of Things. So I'm really much engaged in this space. So yeah, this is a few projects I've been involved in different parts of the world, and yeah.
Yeah, no, excellent. And we had a panel where we had Laura Baker on the panel. So she shared a little bit about City of Casey, and I know Laura quite well. I am looking, it's a call out of getting her on the podcast soon. We're just working out a time, which will be great to have her and talk about things like, yeah, they're very focused on digital equity, like you were talking about, and inclusion, which I think is really important. Now, before we go to the future trends, I know you're super, I guess, interested in that data-driven approach and thinking about like AI and machine learning and those type of things. How do you see this approach? So data and AI and machine learning really shaping the future of smart cities and communities?
Yeah, look, as I mentioned, given just an example of what the City of Casey has done, I think that's a brilliant approach. And there are other communities globally and other cities or communities who is taking more data-driven approach. And it's no-brainer, and everyone knows like the top techs nowadays for today, like whether it's Amazon, you use Facebook, or any sort of tool is definitely using data for better services and use cases. So I think that's the next stage, and that's the next step for any sort of technology. Because I come from technology. When I say I come from, I'm more from the Internet of Things of IoT. Whereas just a bit of IoT. What's IoT? IoT is basically bunches of sensors connected together, communicating to each other. Yeah, that's basically an IoT, which is called Internet of Things. So whether me and you are communicating as humans, we are not. We can say we are things, but when my laptop and my phone are communicating within themselves, or my light is communicating with a fan, or my car communicating with my house, that's Internet of Things or M2M. But M2M or Internet of Things I see it as an infrastructure. It's an infrastructure. So it's basically, it has a purpose, but at the end of the day, it's an infrastructure. So it gives data. And how we use that data, how we use those sensor data for, better usage or better focused approach for our day-to-day life or day-to-day work, that's really important. And that's why this data-driven approach is going to be the next big thing. And definitely we can see that. One of the things I'm really passionate about within this data is, and I see in future there will be a lot of talk going on, is data and ethics. I think that's the area we don't see a lot of talk still happening, whether you talk about regulation, policy, as well as layman's, we don't really understand. Just to give you an example, the recent analysis which came from one of the third-party consultant services, about one of the few retailers using camera-based systems to do facial recognition, and whether it kind of goes beyond the Privacy Act or not. There is a lot of discussion going on in the media, and these are the area which interest me a lot. It's not about what interests me a lot, but what we need to be doing on that. So that's an area which I personally is interested to delve myself more into. So what I see is, when you talk about ethics and data, or digitalization and ethics, it's an area definitely hasn't been nurtured, but a lot of scope of improvement, and hasn't been scoped enough so that it can encompass all the issues. But at the same time, people are not aware, so there's lots of awareness needed. And for like any policy area and regulatory area, it takes time to develop as well as mature, but awareness needs to be there. So in summary, what I'm trying to say, data and ethics, there is a large scope of coming down what we actually mean ethics, okay? Defining ethics, and especially in the context of data analytics, AI, what is ethics, okay? What we can do or we cannot do. So these are very, very important areas we need to discuss and work on, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's something, when I did my master's of data science, something that I was really passionate about as well, or interested in, but then I guess interest first, then passionate about having the conversation and continuing that. And like, what do we need? And we need more people, I find. We need more diversity behind the code. So then we ask these questions. What I say is, behind the code to serve the code, to more diversity behind the code to serve the code in front of it, or serve the people in front of it, rather. And I think, because like you said, we can ask different questions, but also we need to then, what are we asking questions about? What is this that we want to agree on? And I think, going way back to the beginning of the conversation, that context is really important. Different cultures are going to have different views on that, and different thresholds of that as well. Like I lived in South Korea for 3 months, and the threshold was different for privacy, and because they saw a trade-off that was worth it, in inverted commas, that maybe Australians traditionally would be like, no way, that's not happening, or whatever the case may be. So there's so many different, I think that's going to be this like next kind of wild ride that we're going to go on. And I think lots of change is going to happen. And it has to, because otherwise we end up in a place where the biases are bigger than ever before, because we're feeding that data in there and creating these things that don't serve people as they need to. And I think, that would be a failure in my books. So we want more people involved in this conversation, so then we can shape that future that we want.
Definitely, yeah. And being a person working in the technology, and then now policy planning and also strategy. So I personally have interest in developing myself in this area and contributing in this area. I think that's an area, as you said, we need more people to be thinking about it. And just like as an example, like defining ethics, we have to go to the fundamentals, because when you're talking about AI, and there's a lot of discussions, is oh, we are using this data just to help the users. Okay, we are using this data just to give better service, better rewards. But what's the boundary? Yeah, you are collecting some data, that's fine. But when you're trying to get a pattern out of that, you're trying to do a mass population and try to do a data analytics and try to see a pattern out of that. So is it going beyond the boundary, or it's still within the boundary? We don't know, and there's a lot of unknowns. That's first we need to understand, and that's why I'm not saying this is good or this is bad. We haven't really defined what is good, what is bad. So that's where we need to start from. So that's very, as I said, I think you agree that's a very interesting area, and we can delve more. Yeah.
I'm just looking at the time. There's lots more discussion to have, I think. But I'm keen to zoom to the future now. I mean, that's kind of, we started future gazing a little bit there. So what are some of the emerging trends that people aren't talking about enough?
Definitely, I kind of mentioned this data and ethics. I think that's something is very, very crucial. Apart from that, with technology and smart technologies, definitely a lot of communities. I would say Australia is definitely pretty good in terms of working on carbon emission, sustainable technology, or sustainable city, circular economy. So those things has to be forefront, because again, a lot of communities, a lot of countries, when they are mostly adopting technologies, they are not taking those things account. So that's why they're having technologies to get better automation, whether it's in the industry, more industrialization, but definitely the climate effect, the living standards, the sustainability and livability is not taken into account. So that's something has to be there. So that's I'm very much advocate on that particular area. How we can have, definitely we need technology, and again, it's just about keeping those aspects in your principles. That's important, and that's why I'm coming back to this particular point, that you have to have some principles right, principles correct, so that when you have new technologies, new innovation, you can always cross-check, okay, whether we should go this path or that path, or we should be more, whether we should only focus on innovation and cost cutting and automation, or we have other aspects as well. So that's something to keep in mind. The data ethics, as I said, and definitely overall standardization and regulation. I think definitely that's an area it will be evolving. I wouldn't say that's has lacking some limitations, but I'm saying it needs to be evolved, creating policies and strategies in these areas around smart technologies.
So I'm really keen to talk about the projects and things you've been doing in Bangladesh, because I think it's obviously, like we talk about different contexts, but tell us about some of the things that you're doing there, and I guess maybe even some of the changes you've seen since you've started doing projects there.
Yeah, look, that's a big word. So I've been, as I said, like I'm originally from Bangladesh, and I've been always keen to contribute to my community, especially my alumni. I graduated from Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology, BUET. That's the top engineering institution, and doing pretty well. I was a lecturer at that particular institution, so definitely I have kind of obligation to contribute. So I have been mentoring a number of groups, students, communities, and lecturers and professors within my scope. First of all, in terms of STEM education, and when I say STEM education, there are a lot of lackings of resources, primarily in getting the right tool. When I say right tool, getting the technology tools, especially because I work more into the IoT space, like getting the correct boards, whether it's an Arduino board, whether it's a Raspberry Pi, or it's an FPGA. So we help and enable people to get those resources. That's number one. Apart from that STEM area, a few projects I've been involved, which I saw the interest, as I mentioned, that it's completely different than having innovations. What I mean is, like, sometimes when we say innovation, we always think, oh, how I can do something in much cooler way, like just make it, how I can be more cool. But always, the infrastructure there, just to give you an example, like in Bangladesh, a lot of manufacturing plants, and Bangladesh has the top economy, or the export is textile. So textile economy is the largest after China. Bangladesh is the second largest textile exporter. Now, definitely there are a lot of industries in textile, they have really old machines and tools and production capability. Now, countries like those and industries like those, if you want to do automation and Industry 4 in those cases, and say, oh, we're gonna replace everything with robots or anything. It's not possible because the cost doesn't justify. The skill power, the mindset is heavily dependent. And countries in Bangladesh, there are people are manual heavy. There are people dependent. In those cases, but you still need a bit of automation. You need to know how much your machines are running, what's the data of the machine, when it needs to be calibrated or maintenance needs to be done. So when we did some pilot projects, for example, on these sort of industries, initially we were thinking of coming up with some new technologies to do or wipe out some machines. But eventually we found it doesn't justify the cost benefits. And that's why the innovation came not only changing the tools, whether it's any production facilities, but also getting the data out of the machines. So you have to be innovative in terms of working with those legacy machines and how you can somehow connect them to a server or a cloud. So getting the data from those machines, whether it's a maintenance warning or any sort of data out to the cloud from those machines was more important rather than actually changing the machines for their regular running. Similar thing we worked on fish farming. When we went to fish farming, we saw in Bangladesh it's heavily riverine and there's a lot of rivers and ponds, and it's heavily, I would say, inefficient in terms of they don't know what's the capacity of the ponds or the fish because it's an open pond. Yeah. So they don't want to adopt new fish farming technologies, which is much heavily dense and it needs more of monitoring and automation. So within those fish farming bodies, how you can still monitor the fish health, the status of the ponds, and how you can make the best use of the technology, that was different than what you would do in a very fully automated, which is a structured fish plant. What I'm trying to say, due to the context, due to the environment, due to the mindset of the people, the human factor, the innovations, the technologies you need to bring in those countries or those communities will be completely different. What do you think? So that was one of the first things I learned. And one of the platforms which I work is IoT for Bangladesh. The main goal was to contextualize our technology like IoT for Bangladesh. What's happening, what's working and what's not working, trying to bring those things and letting the people know and create the awareness what it can do. So I think that was a very good initiative, as well as a lot of pilot projects we have done. And that was a good, exciting time.
Thanks so much for sharing that. It's really interesting. And how important was it to engage with the community that you were working with or the people that you were working with? And what kind of surprised you about when you engaged with them? Did you go in thinking the problem was one thing and then coming out, realizing it was another?
Very good question. Yeah, that's another good point, because when we work with those communities, a lot of times they have really high expectation on technology. And it's really interesting because, for example, fish farming, okay? So when we say we're going to have interoperable technology, they're going to think, oh, we're going to double the fish, like double or triple, whatever, the fish production, or the reduce the mortality rate by half or whatever. But it was difficult for us to convey the message, look, this is a very complex and very open-ended environment. And when we talk about getting data or doing any sort of data analytics, you need a really closed and environment, and there are a lot of contingencies. So yes, in your theory, you can do a lot of innovations, but when you go there, it's really difficult to do innovation and show the results. So that's number one. And having people with a lot of expectations on technology, it was really difficult to convey that message. So that's the number one. And so what I'm saying, you have to be very careful about when you talk about these smart technologies, that it can do a lot of fascinating things. But when we say people like us, with the technology people, we have to be careful that we don't put over expectations. And it happens. And as I said, like we get frustrated because why things are still happening, and like why you're still piloting and not going to the next stage. Yeah. So that's something it was very clear, which we needed to work. And that's why I think awareness, trying to talk to people about technology in a non-technical way, that was really important. I think that was one of the fundamental things that I tried to develop. Okay, so how you can, boil down or get people understand the benefits of technology in a toned down way. Because when you have very high expectations, within 3 months, 6 months, I need to see results. No, you cannot. So what you need to do, you need to develop a system, change your process, get your people trained to use those particular technologies, and then after some years, you're gonna see the fruit of these sort of smart technologies, whether it's IoT or M2M. And that's why, as I said, IoT I see as an infrastructure. So if you have an infrastructure, then you can start building on it and have the data analytics part or data driven approaches on top of that. So sometimes, as I said, like some people got frustrated and they said, no, I'm not gonna be going through any sort of smart technology deployment or anything. I think that's not a good move, because you're going to still have those inefficiencies biting you. Okay, so that's why there is a need to be realistic expectation, as well as good understanding, awareness within the community. And that is a big challenge for the smart technologies in those communities, I would say.
Now, I'm looking at the time. It's been so great to have you on the podcast, Imran. Thank you so much. I feel like we could definitely have another conversation. Lots happening in this space, and really interesting to hear about some of the things that you've been up to, and I guess where you see it heading as well. So thank you so much for coming onto the pod.
Thanks, Joey, for giving me the opportunity to talk about some of the smart things happening in the world.
Yes. Yeah. Now, one last question. How can people connect with you?
I think the best way would be LinkedIn. So I can be found in LinkedIn. My full name, Emran Amin, and they can be connected. And we can share our views and keep connected.
Perfect. We'll put all the links in the show notes so people can click away and find you. Thank you again for coming onto the podcast, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you, Joey. It was nice talking to you.
Talk soon. Bye.
The Smart Community podcast is brought to you by My Smart Community. If you're looking for support in podcast strategy and production, workshop design and facilitation, or communication and media advisory, get in touch. Email hello@mysmart.community or head to www.mysmart.community.
Thanks so much for listening to the Smart Community podcast. Show notes for this episode and all other episodes are available on our website, mysmart.community/podcast. If you have any questions for us or any of our guests, you can email hello@mysmart.community. You can also find us on the socials. We are on LinkedIn and Twitter @SmartComHQ. That's com with 2 M's. If you are enjoying the podcast, please hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we would love for you to leave us a rating and review at wherever you listen. This really helps us reach more ears and eyes, so thank you for your support. As always, we hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it.
The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.